Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours with ISMTE. My name is Kimberly. I'm the ISMTE Membership Director. Today's topic is More Power for Your Hour, Pros and Cons of Working Remotely, hosted by Neet. We're excited to have everybody here with us. Please use the chat box to tell us where you're joining from, and feel free to adjust your profile to indicate your company and title. A few notes before we begin. To ensure we have great sound quality, everyone other than the presenter is automatically muted and cameras turned off during the presentation. After the host has finished the presentation, we'll ask everyone to join us with their cameras and mics so we can discuss the topic together. Please be sure to mute yourself when you're not speaking to reduce background noise. We are recording this session and it will be posted to the ISMTE website later this week. Neet has no conflict of interest to declare. And our sponsor for this session is J&J Editorial. And if you have an office hours topic that you'd like to host, please get in touch with us and submit the proposal, and we'll be in contact with you. And if you'd like to volunteer for ISMTE, our committees are always looking for motivated member volunteers. Please use the form in the chat link to submit your information to volunteer. Active ISMTE membership is required to volunteer for our committees. And now I'll pass it over to our host for this session. Neet, please take it away.
Okay, thanks very much. Sorry, I missed out that final slide there. Just let you all see that before I go into the slides. Just a couple. No, it's not slide heavy this session. Okay, so thank you for joining me today to gain more power for your hour with the pros and cons of working remotely. Whether you are recently new to working remotely, planning on hybrid or return to on-site working, this session will share helpful tips and tricks for productivity and performance, what's missing with remote working and plugging that gap, remote worker inclusion, self-care and work-life balance, meeting attendance and remain focused in meetings, and I hope this is one of those, and staving off virtual meeting fatigue, all to give you more power for your hours. So before we start, and we'll get into these slides in a sec, just a brief bit of background on myself. I am Juanita Goossens-Roach, or Neet, and I've been in journal administration publishing for nearly 18 years in exactly 1 week, starting as editorial assistant, then leading the peer review administration team whilst continuing in parallel as editorial assistant, and am now the peer review group manager within HSS and STM in the academic department of Cambridge University Press and Assessment. With my role as peer review group manager, I manage 3 teams, recognising online peer review systems, or OPRS, and peer review administration, or PRA, and those 2 unit challenges, and proactively managing demanding project work, driving improvement in responsiveness and service. How these units intersect and interact, as well as a 3rd unit of external administrators assigned to journals outside my PRA team's 30 journals. I'm also a trained disability and neurodiversity ambassador with Cambridge University Press and Assessment, with a special interest to myself, as I am physically disabled, to dispense with the stigma that can be apparent with any disability, whether physical, neurodiversive, or hidden or otherwise, and becoming disability confident. So more power for your hour. As with many others and some of you joining today, I was already in a position of remote working when we were all instructed to do so here in the UK in March 2020. And I've also worked in various different working locations during my near 8 years at Cambridge University Press and Assessment. I came from a decade with another journal before. First, fully on site for a few years, then moving to fully remote for 18 months for health reasons, then back to hybrid with winter months reverting to fully remote, so quite a mixture there. And now returning to fully remote since March 2020, and this to continue regardless of office openings for my own personal health and comfort needs. And during all of these different working locations, I was interested to see how every aspect of working differed depending on those 2 main working locations, on-site versus remote. So this session will be quite conversational, reactionary as needed, but focusing on the pros of working remotely and how each of these can be seen as a con. So as I have the slides on screen, and then I'll put these questions into a poll soon after to gauge your responses, and then use those for discussion points, the notes on screen. So what is your favourite part of working remotely? And the lack of commute cannot be your answer. Is it working location flexibility, so not tied to one set physical location? Working pattern flexibility, so fitting in caring responsibilities or personal tasks. Limited distractions, so the ability to feel and work more productively. Multitask flexibility, so for example, combining working and non-working activities like stretching in a meeting, or the ease of screen sharing rather than huddled around one desk. Meeting productivity, so the ability to set agenda and discussion points and amend those as needed, the ability to access information during meetings, the ease of minuting, auto-transcribing and recording of meetings. That's the beauty of virtual meetings, one beauty of these. Virtual conferences, likewise, the ease of minuting, taking screenshots, asking questions, following up with the presenter or host, either during or shortly afterwards. And avoiding office politics. So if your coffee or tea mug is missing, you cannot blame any co-worker if it's missing in your remote working environment. And then taking each of those, the good parts of working remotely, into a con. So what's your least favorite part of working remotely? This may be something you struggle with, may miss the most, or may be missing compared to on-site working. So again, working location flexibility, having no set routine. Working pattern flexibility, finding the right balance between work and home life. Switching to work mode, so the lack of motivation or struggling to remain productive in a remote environment. Meeting attendance, meetings cut into working time, so we often multitask with meetings in the background. Meetings upon meetings, yes, we'll come to that. With the ease of scheduling virtual meetings, it's really easy to go from one meeting to the next, and we'll come to that in a discussion point. Conference attendance, so this might be something that you miss or may be missing. So networking in an effective but not taxing way, so not another virtual meeting, and traveling and seeing somewhere new. And also social interactions, so spur of the moment chats with colleagues or networking, again, in an effective but not taxing way. Okay, so if I stop sharing now and put those into a poll, the first one, what's your favorite part of working remotely? I think you can only choose one, unfortunately. So I'll launch that and give you a few minutes to put in your responses. Okay, just give it a couple more minutes. See, that's nearly all have responded. You don't all have to respond, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. Hopefully I'll be able to, okay, share the results. Hopefully everyone can see that. So no one's missing the, or no one's missing avoiding office politics, but yeah, fitting it, working pattern flexibility. So fitting in, getting that work-life balance right. I think that's always the main one. Okay, and then I'm going to now share the other poll. There it is. Okay, so what's your least favorite part? Taking all of those similar responses and then changing it into what's your least favorite part of working remotely. So let me launch that poll. So again, it might be something you struggle with, something you miss, something that is missing. I can see someone right away put meetings upon meetings. Yeah. And I'll let you all respond to that. Okay, I'm going to end this one in just a few seconds. Okay, I'm ending this now. And let me share these results with everyone. Okay, hopefully you can see that. So meeting attendance, meeting cutting into working time, again, finding the right balance between home and work life, and also meetings upon meetings, which we will come to. So it's interesting to see those results there. Let me get rid of that so I can then see my screen. So yes, just before we get into it, I just share a story about not missing office politics, about the not missing someone else using your office coffee or tea mug. Even at home, that can happen, and I'll go into more detail about my own working environment. I work once I've done the school run and seen my husband off for work, not in that order. I then am by myself. So on the unexpected days when he is home, I have found that he has used not only a mug, but a mug. Can you maybe, there we go, a mug with my name on it. Maybe that's backwards, but yeah, I caught him using that. So office politics still happens even if working in a home environment. But anyway, back to the discussion. So yes, I thought it would be good to go into all of those in more detail, all of those that were on screen. I'll go into those individually. So starting off, if anyone wants to put on their camera, if they want to unmute themselves at any point, then that's fine. So working location flexibility, just to get the conversation started on this, it would be an understatement to say that a remote working location is completely different to on-site working, as every aspect is different. But there are ways to ensure you are as mentally and physically comfortable when working remotely. So I thought I'd share what works for me, what might work for you. Others can share what works for them as well, for this particular one. So let me get my screen. There we go. So having a set desk location, or at least for yourselves, a set desk setup, but a different desk location, because that is one of the main benefits of working remotely, is we can choose where we work. If it's a nice day, we can sit out in the garden if we have garden space. We can move rooms if we like. For myself, I have a set desk setup just for my own physical needs, and physical comfort is key to self-care and productivity. For myself, if I'm in more pain than usual, I find that I'm concentrating on that, and that eats into my productivity, and maybe for yourselves as well. So having a physical setup where you're comfortable, it can be wherever you like, but as long as it's comfortable, I find it really helps. And it helps to switch into work mode as well, which we'll come to in a bit as well. So having a desk space, a set desk space, works for me because of that physical working location association. It's not really a catchy phrase, that, but associating a set physical space. And again, that space can change. You don't have to be tied to one location if you don't want to, but just having a comfortable setup is key, whatever your physical needs are. And going back to working location flexibility, having a routine, and it doesn't have to be a strict routine, but or even the same routine as on-site working, but a modified or new routine that works for you with remote working. And the beauty of remote working is that we can have a flexible routine. That kind of is an oxymoron, a flexible routine, but it just means that we can also break up the monotony of remote working. For myself, I stuck to a pretty similar routine when I switched from on-site to hybrid working, and also when I was doing the mix as well because of caring responsibilities, dropping my daughter off to school, and also other personal tasks that you can fit in to that routine. And also, as I said, it breaks up the monotony of remote working, and also ensures that you have breaks to break up that monotony of remote working as well. So for me, a routine helps, especially with physical comfort and productivity as well, and all about that self-care. I'll go into more detail about how a routine can impact like meeting attendance and hard stops and such like, and things that have helped with myself. Okay, so if anyone has any ideas or questions or anything like that, just feel free to pop them in the chat box as we go along. So then working pattern flexibility, that was the next in the poll. So I think this is the big one, finding the right balance between work and home life, because home is where we are now working. And the one main and biggest con with working remotely, apart from virtual meeting fatigue, which I'll cover later, is that work is right there. And for me, right there is in my lounge, in my living room. So when I'm watching a film in my free time, how do I then stop work from watching me? As I mentioned, I have hard stops. So whether at the end of meetings or at the end of my working day, I won't just down tools, as my husband calls it, but so I won't just stop in the middle of writing an email or in the middle of a meeting. If so, I just won't just like up and leave. But I'll try and stick to those to ensure that I do get that right balance between work and home life, because otherwise it can snowball. It can be like, oh, I'll just spend 5 minutes on this email or 5 extra minutes in this meeting, or not pushing it to stop. And then those 5 minutes spent on an email can then progress into, oh, it's then half an hour, then it's an hour, then it's the evening, then I'm not getting any free time. Sometimes it can then be, oh, I'll just get to it over the weekend. And then that's eating in again into your free time. So, but then you might think, well, what happens when an idea comes to you about following up on an email, how to tackle it, or a project, or anything that comes into your head past working hours? So what I do, and I do it old school, because otherwise if I open my laptop, I might then check my email, and then to open my laptop to write down a few thoughts, then I might risk opening my email. And then that's when it can snowball into, oh, I just get pulled into this 5-minute thing, and then this 5-minute thing. And then before I know it, I've done 10 5-minute things, and that's nearly an hour spent on all of those. And they're never 5-minute things. Actually, that's not an hour. Yes, it is. I know, I can do maths. So anyway, I jot it down on this. My line reports see this a lot. And sometimes I regret jotting it down because then I can't read my own handwriting. But it does really help with resisting the temptation to check in past that otherwise would be my free time, because then you're not enjoying your free time. You're not getting any free time. I try to stick to it as much as I can. Obviously, there is some flexibility. So if I need to, I will go past my working hours as I need to, but I do tend to just write down a few thoughts. The reason I don't do it on my laptop, as I mentioned, is because it can be easy to then can be then easy to just access your email and open up documents and files and start working on it. Whereas I hate to say it can wait. Obviously, if there is an urgency to something that needs to be done, then I will check, but only for that one thing. So it does take some commitment to not snowball into working more and more. Other things that really help me in terms of working pattern flexibility is to take regular breaks. So not just getting up, having a break, or even a full lunch hour, but there are other ways to take breaks as well. And I thought about what these would be. So visual breaks, either by so exercising your eyes by looking away from one screen. If you work on more than one screen, then just moving your focus. If it's just one single screen that you look at, and I have my laptop which is duplicated, and then I just like look around. Sorry, that looks a bit strange. I just look around the room and exercise my eyes. You can combine that with moving around as well, but it just means that we're not just staring at the same screen for 7 hours, something that my optician is never too pleased with as I go to them. Combine those with physical breaks as well. So either in your full lunch hour or just changing physical positions at regular intervals. So the beauty of virtual meetings is we can turn off our cameras so we can stretch. I won't say yawn, without pulling focus away from the presenter or meeting chair. So for myself, I do take the full lunch hour. One thing about my laptop, which kind of makes me have the full lunch hour, is it goes into a weird deep sleep mode that I can't wake it up from after 15 minutes of inactivity. So I just turn off my laptop, and that forces me to go and also for my own physical needs, I do exercise during my lunch hour. Also means I get a visual break, I get a physical break. I also get a break if I'm going for a run or a walk. It means I can get a break outside, get some fresh air, and even you can even combine that with being social as well, as long as it's safe to do so. So you can meet up with friends to do the same. So you're getting all of these breaks from work as well. And another type of break, not just thinking like I'm going to get up and go get myself a cup of coffee or just do a perimeter around the room. There could be, so I'm just reading that comment. It helps me take 3 20-minute breaks every few hours. Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't have to be right bang in the middle of your working day, you take an hour's lunch break. It could be whatever fits in to break up the monotony of the day, because we are working remotely and sometimes that can feel isolated to be working by ourselves. Even if you have partners or other people who are working in the same building, the same house as yourself, you're still, or even in the same room, you're still in one zone working remotely, unless of course you work and live with someone who works with you. So another type of break is a mental break. So it could be a combination of physical and visual. So this can be, you might think, oh, I'm going to need to take all of these breaks now. This can be a way of still doing work, but having a type of break. So what I mean is shifting your focus from something that's very intensive, very all-encompassing, to something more administrative. And again, that's having a visual break because you're not really focusing on it. Exactly. So there's Wordle as well. So you're shifting your focus away from the intensity of one particular thing onto something more administrative, but you're still doing work, you're still getting something done, but it means that you're just having another form of break in there as well. It could even mean checking the headlines in the news, although we all know it's the same headlines day in, day out, or very quickly changing. One final type of break could be breaks in longer meetings themselves. So for me, it's perfectly fine to suggest a break for long or longer meetings and raise those preferably at the start, or if a meeting goes on longer than scheduled. So again, you'd be able to turn your camera off, get up, move around, visual break, physical break, mental break, all of those breaks all at once, and then return fresh and ready to focus again, because we, as a lot of meeting goes on for longer, then we kind of start to lose focus on what is being covered. Okay, so I thought move on to switching to work mode. So you may struggle with the lack of motivation or struggling to remain productive in a remote environment because we are by ourselves, or you may be with someone else who's working with you. But sometimes the removal of on-site office distractions can make it seem hard to remain as productive in a remote setting, because work can then seem monotonous. Or if you have ongoing projects and tasks, it might be where to start. Even with a meeting heavy or project heavy workload, you may feel you may feel a lack of motivation, as it feels like everything and everyone needs everything to be done at once. So there are a couple of things that already help me switch to work mode, as I mentioned. So physical desk location, a routine, working pattern flexibility, even within that routine as well. Other things that work for me, which may work for you, probably do already: block booking or scheduling of set tasks to keep productivity to the max. So I don't feel like, oh, I have all of this to do today. How am I going to fit it in, or all of this to do over the week? So I block book my schedule. Doesn't mean that I'm not available. It just means that I've set this time for myself to do, and I know that I'll be able to do this particular task for an hour, a couple of hours, 3 hours at the most, then have a lunch break, and then maybe do something else, come back to the same task as well. It helps me to structure my day, so I know what's in store for me, what's in store for my week, so I can get into that day, get into that that day or week mindset. One important thing to note is, if you do block booking or other things that help you stay on track, then let me just read this comment. Yes, distracted by housework. I'll just take care of this laundry real quick, and then let me clean up the kitchen, and then get a lot of work done. Yes, distraction. But I suppose if we were working on site, we wouldn't be able to then be distracted by those things, because we wouldn't say, right, I'm just going to pop home to mow the lawn. But that is one of the beauties of working from home, is that we can fit it in. And yeah, other household members sometimes not always respecting that you're at work. I have a note on my door, although we can't close it at the moment because we need to plane off a little bit from underneath. But I have a note on my door, so when I'm in a meeting, my husband knows not to come bursting in doing the hoovering or anything like that. And I'll often let him know if I have a meeting when I'm expecting him home from work, or if he's at home, I'll say I have meetings at such and such a time during the day, because his job is quite different from mine, and don't often respect that when I'm here at my desk and I do listen to music when I'm not in meetings, then it might seem that I'm at a party or something, but in actual fact, no, it particularly helps me concentrate on doing whatever I'm doing. As long as it's not in a meeting, then of course I won't have the music on. But if you use block booking or scheduling, or any way that sort of pops up and reminds you that this is what you're doing now, not talking about meetings, but block booking your tasks, then it's important to think, when you're just hovering over that dismiss button, which I've done many times, to think, why have you set it up? You set it up for a reason, to do this particular task at this time. And there is some flexibility. If I'm have a meeting that's overrun, and I try to keep my meetings to time, but if I do have one that overruns, then I'll move that task to another day. Very rarely that I do that, because I go back to that thought. I set up the block booking in my schedule for a reason, is to do these things within a certain time, and I try not to either reschedule them or dismiss them, unless of course other meetings come up, and then of course there's flexibility with that. Excuse me. So then meeting attendance, before we come to the big one, which is meetings upon meetings upon meetings, and then virtual meeting fatigue. Okay, so meeting attendance, meetings do cut into working time, and I appreciate you all joining today. But we often multitask with those meetings in the background. So depending on how you look at this, with attendance at all our virtual meetings, it can sometimes be hard to remain focused, interactive and productive during these meetings. It can be easy to have a meeting on in the background whilst attending to a particular task. So it could be something administrative like minute updating, reporting and data analysis, even project work, or checking your inbox. I hope none of you are doing any of these right now, but not be offended if you are. So I try not to have meetings on in the background, as I will not be giving either the meeting I'm attending nor the task I'm doing my full attention. But then you might say, well, I might miss out on vital meetings because I need to do the tasks and responsibilities associated with my role. So I question my attendance at the meeting. I think, what is the meeting purpose? What will I bring or get from attending that meeting? Is there an agenda? Would there be minutes? What the expected outcomes? And if I really can't find the time to attend, then can I catch up via other methods? Could it be, and that's the beauty of virtual meetings, could it be a recording, transcripts, minutes even? Or is another colleague going already, and can they report back to me, or can I ask someone to attend in my place? Of course, it'll then add to their time, so make sure you're not pushing on their time. But I try to find out the meeting purpose and what role my role has in the meeting, and vice versa as well. So what will I bring to the meeting and get from the meeting, even if I don't say anything in the meeting? And sometimes we attend ones where we don't say anything at all. And then at the meeting itself, pre-prep. So it's a term invented by my husband, my mashing together, both being prepared and prepping. So again, what's the meeting purpose? Are there minutes? Is there agenda? Is the minutes from last time, agenda, action points, anything like that? So I know what to expect. And then I can remain focused as well. And when I attend such meetings, I treat it as an in-person meeting. So I think back to when I was working on site, I wouldn't attend a meeting but be working on something else. But of course, you might think, well, I have to do both. So it would go back to, can you catch up via other methods? And with the beauty of virtual meetings, they're now being recorded more and more. And likewise, put yourself in the presenter's shoes, or the person chairing the meeting. So if you were presenting or chairing a meeting, I don't like to say, but you wouldn't like it if someone was not giving their full attention to that meeting. So by doing something else in the background, or having the meeting on in the background. So again, can you catch up via other methods that fit into your schedule? Could another colleague who's already attending report back to you if they weren't going to already? And just find out the outcomes or the purpose of the meeting before. If you can. I understand that not every meeting is going to have like a synopsis or an overview or a long-winded overview of what the meeting is about, especially if it's a regular one that people are expected to know. But I find it helpful to at least know if there's an agenda as well. And I'll come more into that into the next bit about meetings upon meetings. And then if you find your focus shifting during meetings, it's always about that workload factor, about there's too much to do without the addition of yet another meeting. And it's not just the fact that we'll have one meeting and that's it. There will be discussion points, there'll be action points, there'll be at least a roundup of the meeting, or at least one thing that might spur off that meeting that you've attended that then you need to attend to, and it might then have another meeting scheduled on top of that, or because of that. And this segues nicely into the next discussion point, and possibly the worst part of working remotely, which is meetings upon meetings upon meetings upon meetings, and then virtual meeting fatigue. So with back-to-back meetings, I find we have no time to decompress information from one meeting before we then go to the next, if we have back-to-back ones. No time to pre-prep for that next meeting, to just get into that mindset. Okay, so this is what happened last time. These are the action points. This is what's going to be discussed. And this is my update on a particular action point. Also, as I said, when we have back-to-back meetings, there's no time for follow-up or action points from that one meeting before we go to, before we go to the next. And then with back-to-back meetings, there's a danger of keeping meetings to time. So I'm sure many of you who have worked in on-site offices being glared at by your colleagues as you overrun slightly in the meeting room. It can be hard to keep meetings to time because we don't want to cut people off mid-thought or mid-flow and interrupt their thought. So I thought about things that have helped me, especially with virtual meeting fatigue, and there is help on this virtual meeting fatigue horizon and what works for myself and what might work for you as well. I have meeting-free days, so you might not have the luxury of having a whole day to set aside for meeting-free days. It could be a meeting-free morning or meeting-free afternoon, or just a chunk of time, which you could then not have because otherwise you then get like virtual meeting fatigue attending such things. But I am flexible with these, so I have the odd meeting on my meeting-free days. But I always think, go back to what is the meeting purpose? Can I catch up via other methods? Obviously, can I reschedule? And just what helps, just not have it so it's meetings upon meetings. And it might not be the case for you all, but just not falling into that trap. Scheduling of meetings might help. So set meetings for 45 minutes or with a 15-minute natural break. So if it might be for yourself, that there's that natural break before your next one, or whoever is joining you for their next one. And again, catching up via other methods. I'm just pausing to read this chat. Does anyone find it's easier to fall into procrastination trap while working remotely? I'll be able to focus on this tonight before bed. I can catch up on the weekend. Yeah, right, this catch up time rarely happens. Yes, that for myself, Angela, what I do is I go back to that block booking of time, so that and I work backwards. So if I know that there's a deadline, I'll work backwards from that, so I can then fit it into my schedule. So then I'm not eating into my own my own free time and that I can get everything done, but also I'm not going to spend 7 hours of my working day on one task, because I don't think anyone should have to spend all of one day doing one particular task. It's to break it up as well into manageable bits. So I work backwards from a deadline. So if I know that there's a deadline, then what works for me, and also give myself a little bit of breathing room, so I'm not finishing it right before the deadline. I can look it over with a fresh head before I need to send it on to whoever needs it by a particular date. Going back to virtual meeting fatigue, is it possible to attend portions of a meeting? So again, if there is an agenda, and if there's timings on that agenda, it's possible to attend portions of the meeting. So what would affect your role? So what value will you get from attending, and how does it feed into your role and responsibilities? What's the expected outcome, so that you can attend portions of a meeting, or as I always said, say catch up via other methods as well. Catching up probably means it's another staring at the screen virtual situation again, but it's just easing up on the virtual meeting fatigue we get when we go from meeting to meeting to meeting, and having no time to decompress and actually do stuff that comes up from those meetings. One final bit about staving off virtual meeting fatigue is trying to keep it to time, and we will try it with this today. So set an agenda, if you can, set an agenda yourself to keep to time, to monitor timings of those. Limit the time spent on discussion points. So is it possible to discuss it offline? Try not to I don't want to tell you what to do. Try not to schedule another meeting for the sake of a meeting. Can it be discussed offline in more detail? Sure, if the meeting is to discuss that one particular thing, then go off in detail. But if there's lots of things to be considered in a meeting, and it's set for a certain amount of time, you don't want it to overrun, but you still want to get through everything. So it's about reaching that nice, happy level. Free time is like a unicorn, fabled but rarely seen. I don't know where I come up with these things. So yes, have it. And free time isn't just like free time when you're not working. It's non-meeting time, I should say, rather. Okay, so yes, and exactly, Julie. It's about scheduling in things into your working day when you feel most productive, and people feel most productive. They can feel either that in the morning, the afternoon, whatever works for you. So you're dealing with those bigger projects whenever you feel most productive. Okay, so conference attendance. This might be something that you miss or is missing. So networking in an effective but not taxing way. So not another virtual meeting and traveling and seeing somewhere new as well. The one thing missing from virtual or even hybrid conferences is networking, but the thought of scheduled networking is an oxymoron in itself. How can we be spontaneous if we schedule in networking meetings? How can we schedule networking meetings if we do not know with whom we wish to network? And even if we have scheduled networking meetings, how can we ensure these do not feel too samey, repetitive and boring, and thus rendering the whole concept a pointless and onerous exercise? So I'm not sure if you all went, but I went to the ISMTE 2021 conference, and I attended scheduled one-to-one speed networking as well as other sessions as well. It's a bit like the concept of speed dating. So spending 5 minutes with a random attendee before then being paired with another attendee during the allotted 15-minute overall networking scheduled slot. My personal approach during those was, rather than going down the same road of who are you, what do you do, and how long have you done it, as this can get tiresome to repeat the same introduction over and over again, but also this information can be garnered and better digested from a person's conference profile, and time is better spent on actual networking. So with all meetings and conferences such like I attend, even if they are virtual, I thought about how to make and get the most out of these networking opportunities by asking one interesting question rather than a brief bio introduction, always keeping in mind what key takeaway I could then take away and bring back to the PRA, the OPRS, the peer review group, and the HSS and the STM units that I work with. So conference attendance with networking, they can be really helpful, especially with social interactions, which is moves on to the next, which is, as we are working remotely, we may miss spur of the moment chats with colleagues, might not miss people coming in and stealing your mug, or networking. And we are humans, and by default social creatures. So with remote working, even if you are working in an environment where someone else is there with you, it can still feel isolating, very insular and secluded as we continue with this. Some of you may return to on-site hybrid when it's safe to do so. Some of you may prefer to continue to work from home, as I will be doing so. So for myself, as I mentioned, I work remotely and usually at home by myself until I go to pick up my daughter from school, and then my husband comes home from work. But during one of my line report meetings, I forgot to mention the fact that my husband was home, and he appeared just about here wearing a hooded top, looking a little bit dodgy. So I could tell by my line report's eyes that he was thinking about saying something. So I just mentioned to him that, no, I am expecting this person here. It's fine. But how do we, other than those few times, how do we stave off feelings of isolation and loneliness? But whilst remaining productive for work, but maintain that right balance. Yes, it is work, so it won't feel like a party or akin to free time. But that does not mean work should not be enjoyable. So the social aspect side of things, social groups, and yes, it will mean another form of virtual interaction. At Cambridge University Press and Assessment, we have a variety of social groups where people can share things such as their cats, pictures of cats and dogs, and other social activities. And when it's safe to do so, to meet up to just socialize with people when it's safe to do so. And through those social groups, that's a form of networking away from just your immediate communication sphere. So things you might miss in terms of social interactions, spur of the moment chats with colleagues. We're not going to get that as we did as we walked down the halls of where we worked, but at least with social groups, there's that opportunity to network with those others that we didn't know we could network with, to then ensure that we do still have social interactions. Casual catch-ups. So for me, and these are on my non-meeting days, because technically they're not work meetings, I have a couple of casual catch-ups with colleagues that we just have that social interaction with someone else, so it doesn't feel so isolated and insular and secluded as well. Similarly, randomized coffees, we have those at Cambridge University Press and Assessment, a bit like the speed networking, but you paired up with one person for the full time. And again, it opens out your communication sphere. It opens out that networking sphere when you're paired up with someone that you don't usually work with. Yes, it's another form of virtual meeting to attend or virtual format, but a different format than formal meetings, so helps us remain human in a remote, isolated, and increasingly machine-like world. So the final topic, and I will keep to time here, remote worker inclusion. So ensuring that that collaborative feeling continues even when we have returned to on-site or hybrid working. So pre-pandemic times, and I'm sure many of you experience this as well, those who worked remotely, whether permanently or hybrid, were often unintentionally overlooked or not actively included or involved in on-site meetings, workshops particularly, because it's hard to include when you're doing workshoppings like sticking sticky notes on a wall and discussions as well, and myself included or rather excluded in that. Wherever you are, everyone has proven that working remotely works, and interacting and collaborating in meetings can work regardless of physical location. But how can we ensure that this collaborative and interactive feeling continues when offices open and on-site or hybrid working returns? So some things that help me and to manage our hybrid remote team pre-pandemic and also works now is ensure everyone has a voice to be heard. So no question or idea is silly. As one of my line reports put it, how can we know something can be done more efficiently if we do not know those possibilities? Even if something seems really obvious to yourself, how do you know it may be obvious to others? At the very worst, it will just reinforce that and give you the comfort in that knowledge that you knew that you were right in the first place, and so did other people as well. And what better way to share best practices and ideas as well? Another way that works for me for that remote worker inclusion is to nominate speakers for a shared democratic and collaborative discussion. So it's not just about me leading discussions or sharing my thoughts and my ideas, but also to nominate speakers to share their best practices as well. Another thing that works for me with remote worker inclusion is, this is just personally from itself, is I'm the same me as I am on site, just in a different physical location, so 2D rather than 3D. And my virtual door is always open, obviously during office hours, of course, even during meetings, even during my blocked book times. It doesn't mean that people can't ask me questions via Teams messaging or via email. I try not to check my inbox during meetings, but if a direct message pops up via Teams and I know it's urgent, then I will just apologise and just to in the meeting if I need to. Obviously, if I don't need to, it's going to bring attention to that. So yes, my virtual door remains open even during office hours, I should say, rather than not. So yes, just to conclude now, because I realise we've got about 6 minutes left. I hope you found this session informative. Whatever and how you take key changes away, try to stick to them as you set them for a reason, or at the very least, stick to them for a trial period to see if they work for you. What works for me may not work for you. What works for you may not work for me. You might take bits away. But as I said at the start, and hopefully I did say this, how will you know something will or will not work if you don't give it a try? If it's really not going to work, obviously, then don't, because then you'd be wasting your time. But it's all about whether it can help tackle all of these things, the virtual meeting fatigue, that work-life balance, switching into work mode, making sure you're as comfortable as possible, everything like that, just giving it a try. So hopefully this will give you some ideas on achieving that work-life balance, being pre-prepped, productive and getting the most out of meetings, and also reducing virtual meeting fatigue, ensuring remote working inclusion is at a premium for your own self-care as well, and to remain human in a remote, isolated, and increasingly machine world, and to give you more power for your hour. So I believe we have 5 minutes left. Hopefully I have covered some things. Let me just, Donna asks, what social groups are people using for networking? I can say at the press we use things like Yammer, Teams. I don't think email threads, because that's just yet another email thing, but there are many other, Zoom as well, and many other things. And yes, it is another form of virtual contact, but it just ensures that we're still social creatures even though we're at work, and that's, I think, the biggest thing that was missing compared to on-site working. It's not going to feel the same, it never will, but there are many aspects that that are good and that are that can be sort of changed slightly in this remote world that we're working in. Does anyone else have any questions that I've not? Hopefully I have. Kimberly, if I haven't covered everything, just let me know.
I don't think there are any outstanding questions, but if anybody has some, please feel free to put them in the box really quick.
And just to fill that awkward silence, I'm just trying to plug that the gap that's missing the most, which is that social connection, because otherwise we can feel, and this is all what I thought about, what I've heard from others as well. So it's not just all about my own thoughts, but it's that when we're working remotely, even if we have if we have outside space, etc., to move around, when we're at work, it can feel quite box-like. And now that we're working remotely, and many of you may continue to do so, even in a hybrid way, we're not getting that social interaction with our colleagues that we would spur of the moment. And the social interactions we are getting are very virtual based, and there's not much can be done about that until restrictions do improve. But you may want to continue with remote working, which is what I'm doing. So it's about staving off that feeling of I wouldn't say isolation, but just to ensure that there is that definitive line between home and work, because work is right there. And I just make sure that when I'm watching a film, my laptop isn't watching me like, hello, could you be doing some work? And I'm thinking, no, because it's outside of my working hours. But of course, being flexible with that, so it's not just having a hard stop at the end of a meeting or at the end of a working day. Yeah, we're all experiencing the same things. Yeah, similar things. And that's what I've built this on, just from similar experiences everyone has experienced, basically.
Well, if there are no other questions, we appreciate hearing your thoughts about today's session. So if you could complete the review that comes after when we close it, that would be wonderful. Many thanks to Neet for hosting the session, and thank you to everyone who participated and for your attendance and engagement. If you'd have a topic you'd like to discuss with other editorial professionals during office hours, please use the link in the chat box to send us your suggestion. The webinar recording will be posted to the ISMTE website and be available publicly, so feel free to share with your fellow editorial professionals, and be sure to check our social media and ISMTE website for upcoming events. Thank you again to our sponsor for this session, J&J Editorial, and everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Bye.